Hey, Akhilesh, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, Venkat, thanks. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Could you please tell us about yourself and your background and where are you calling us from today?
I'm currently in Germany. I've been traveling around a little bit, but my base otherwise is in London. I've been there for about 5 years now. My background is in engineering before I moved on to public policy and affairs, which is where I was last before I quit to start my businesses in e-commerce about just under 2 years ago now. In the process, I've started and in some form exited three different businesses, and I'm actually working on setting up a fourth right now. But I'm sure we'll get into more detail as we go on to the conversation.
Yeah. So you founded three companies and yeah, all of them are D2C companies.
Mhm.
Could you please share us insights about what are the real challenges while founding D2C?
Well, I think I want to step back and kind of hit upon why D2C in the first place very briefly, because when I initially decided to start my first company, it was what I wanted to do was irrelevant. I just kind of wanted to do something to, let me quit my job and get some agency and independence in my hand. The decisions were dictated by the constraints I had at the time, which is frankly a lack of capital and the fact that I still had a full time job and I needed to start whatever I needed to start with a laptop and outside of working hours. E-commerce is one of those things that kind of lets you do that as long as you're willing to put in the work. D2C, again, cutting out a lot of the middlemen. And what I worked on in D2C is specifically high ticket drop shipping. So the beauty of drop shipping, like unlike the other brands, is that I don't own the inventory. I don't go after manufacturing. I don't go any of that. I kind of sign up contracts with existing brands and then effectively advertise and market them to my company and my e-commerce website. So in effect, I'm a multi-brand retailer. So with that context in mind, I feel one of the biggest challenges of D2C brands in the context of high ticket dropshipping is the fact that you and all of your direct competitors who are also multi-brand retailers operating in the space are effectively selling the same product. There's nothing particularly nuanced or unique about the products that you're selling because you are retailing other brands. So then the biggest challenge in the industry where I was in for the 3 months that I worked on so far is trying to find a way to stand out in the crowd so a customer actually chooses you. Because if you're going to buy let's say, a treadmill from a known brand, it doesn't really matter where you buy the treadmill from. You can go to the brand itself, or you can go to 100 different retailers that sell that brand. Like, why would they choose you? And the easiest way to do that is a price war, right? It's a race to the bottom. The lowest price you can offer the customer, the odds are they're going to end up choosing that. But there are also other ways in which you can stand out, whether it's quality branding, whether it's the customer support, after sales care, etc., etc. And that is a key thing to need to figure out in the space that I was working in. Because I was also in high ticket. So my products average from 1,500 pounds per item up to little gliders, which is the most recent ones, around a 300-pound item. So you're automatically selling high ticket products where price conscious customers end up kind of dictating why they choose where to buy.
Yeah. So you basically specialized in dropshipping market, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So could you please elaborate how you select any kind of niche you're going to work with?
Okay, so the first one I started was in the fitness niche. So I
Oh,
effectively sold fitness equipment, weights, multi-gym equipment, treadmills, the usual stuff. So whenever I went about selecting a niche, I kind of established some criteria for myself very clearly. So some of these criteria could include, for example, having products over a 300-pound mark that is diverse enough that people will actually purchase it. It shouldn't be like, a treadmill is only available for 1,000, but 80% of the market is in the 200, 100, and I wouldn't be able to compete. The other thing is having enough brands that are existing and operate in the UK market, but at the same time, they're not so well known like the Apple or Samsung that
oh,
those brands would not work with me. So there are enough brands, but they're not household name brands, for example, unless you're already in the market. Many other criteria, for example, what is the after sales conditions like? Are they mostly based in the UK? Are they imported into the UK? Because I wanted to source products from the UK to sell them within the UK, because after Brexit and all of that, customs is not something I wanted to deal with. And the number of direct competitors out there, like, are there other retailers like me who are also selling them on a dropship basis, as in they don't have a physical warehouse or they don't own a lot of stock? Because if I'm finding that only competitors that can operate in this niche are the ones who have massive storefronts and these massive warehouses, I can't compete with them. So I needed to make sure there was direct competition, and competition being a good sign that this market is kind of penetrable. So the logic I went with was me getting a small market share in a very large market is still a lot for me on an objective basis. right? So I kind of sat with myself and came up with some of these criteria. And then I came up with a list of 50 to 100 different niches. And then for each niche, I went down and ticked a box. Does it fit this criteria? Does it not? Does it fit this criteria? Does it not? And based on that, I kind of narrowed it down to about 5 or 10. And then just went with my gut would work well. So fitness was the one I started off with. Then I moved on to micro electric vehicles, which was e-bikes and e-scooters, and then finally to baby gear and baby items and playtime equipment, which I kind of went off for that. So the selection was based on criteria I selected for myself that kind of made sense, but also depicted kind of reduced the chance of failure because you set it up in a more probabilistic way.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. So you've been working in the different niches and the different kinds of products. So, but on the overall idea, so what are the trends you have been observing in the e-commerce industry now?
But e-commerce is very broad. See, for example, if I'm an e-commerce brand and I'm selling t-shirts, I'm fundamentally operating in a different market than an e-commerce brand that sells treadmills. The price point is different, your market is different, the way you market and reach your customer is different, what the customer expects is very different. The expectations in a high ticket market of selling 1,500 pound items is a lot higher than if you're buying a 20-pound t-shirt. So I can't speak for e-commerce writ large. I can speak about e-commerce in high ticket. So I'm going to put that caveat out there right away. I mean, the first aspect of trends is that it's getting more and more crowded. The nature of how a customer buys items now is moving online. And this is happening across the board. It is a steadily growing market. More people are buying online. More people are more comfortable buying more expensive things online, more branded things online than they were 10 years ago. And this is happening in the UK. And in the other market I operated in India, you
Yeah.
see that as well. There is this kind of establishment there. That is a big part of it. The second thing in e-commerce I'm seeing is that there is an emphasis that there's a lot of convergence and fighting for the exact same real estate of getting a customer's attention. And which is where players like Meta and Google kind of become your biggest bottleneck in acquiring a customer. And if you don't know how to handle Meta and Google well, you're effectively not going to make any sales. These are the overarching trends. And then I can't not mention artificial intelligence because it feels like this elephant in the room. But to a large extent, that's kind of affecting every market, every sector, every industry in the tech world completely. And AI at this point is going to work in your marketing atmosphere because we can't survive in e-commerce without performance marketing. And that is fundamentally AI. And how you incorporate AI into the business itself is really dependent on which business you're in. So the only thing I can say about e-commerce writ large is that more people are buying online, more people are coming in to navigate that space.
Yeah, no, got it. So as we are speaking about the AI and the trends in the industry right now, so 2025 is going to be the biggest shift for the AI. So
Mhm.
how you are implementing the AI solutions, how you are integrating AI into your current system?
Okay, so is AI kind of plays a part, every small part in multiple avenues of what the business is. I look at AI as, let this me find a right way to put it, as a very cheap or unpaid intern who can do a little bit of everything for me, but I cannot trust to take care of anything. Right? It's
Right.
like somebody I have to look over their work constantly. And effectively, what use you make of that intern is going to depend on what you need at that time. The biggest way AI helped me personally was in developing and setting up the websites because I developed and built them out completely myself. And it made things like writing descriptions for the products, structuring it well, so much faster and more efficient than I would have done without an AI. I would have probably had to hire a copywriter. But the caveat being the descriptions, the copywriting, etc., they are decent at best. They're not very good. They are not optimized. They lack this human touch. And very quickly you start seeing AI using certain patterns of how it frames and composes this kind of text. And that gets very icky very quickly. The other way, essentially analyzing market data, it allows you to synthesize things a lot easier and draw conclusions from. It's a great way of brainstorming tools. And that's for me as the founder using AI for my day-to-day elements of it. But in terms of how it actually works in the purchase journey of my customer, the easiest one is marketing. I, as a founder, I'm not really using this in that way. But if you work with Google performance marketing or Meta performance marketing, AI is effectively driving how they reach your customer and which customer they reach. I don't understand the nitty gritty behind it. I don't understand the nuts and bolts of it. I just know how to kind of look at it from an overarching picture. AI, I'm not the biggest fan of it in terms of because I can't trust it to do anything completely without having somebody sit on top of it and make sure it does it right. In the future, going forward, I see the changes happening. The text is getting better. It can develop images that is better. It can help me strategize in some ways that are better. I, on a personal level, use it as a great brainstorming tool. It's a great thing to kind of hit back ideas with, or give it a lot of information and ask it questions to kind of understand and brainstorm with. But the basic level at which I'm operating as a high ticket D2C brand for these 3 months that I've operated so far, the scale hasn't hit nearly as high as which I could actually start paying for really efficient and sophisticated AI tools. But I know there's a lot of use in which I could use AI for marketing, for example, like having it as an AI-led CMO, which is going to be a lot cheaper than hiring a CMO. But you need a certain level of scale and size, and I'm not there yet, right? I'm effectively per business. I'm bringing in about 10K a month, and the AI CMO itself is going to be taking away a grand or two. So I couldn't justify that cost. But it is something I'm working towards. But the AI tools I'm working right now are the basic ones like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, and they're really good for brainstorming content and helping you decide what to do. But ultimately, if you're not going through what it does in a fine tooth Chrome, it's going to be half-assed content at best.
Completely makes sense. So as you are starting your new venture is Lilora, right? Lilora.
Yeah, that's right.
So could you please elaborate more about your new venture? What is it and how it is going to be?
So Lilora is in some way an extension of Little Gliders. Now, we didn't get into this, but Little Gliders is effectively another high-ticket D2C brand, multi-brand retailer that I set up in the UK that focuses on baby equipment and child play care. So everything you need for a child from about birth to maybe 12 years old, except for like apparel and essentials. So you can think about development-focused toys, strollers, travel gear, that kind of stuff. The average order value being about 300 pounds. Lilora is effectively me trying to start something similar, but for a completely different market in India, which is where I've been spending half my time now. And the only difference being, Lilora is in my at least what I'm trying to do is not be another multi-brand retailer selling other brands out there, but it's effectively setting up my own brand, creating a brand from scratch and that comes into it a whole host of things that you don't really have to think about if you're becoming a retailer, which is that you need to figure out your own branding, what products you're selling, the manufacturing element of it, the packaging, all of those things that you don't necessarily have to worry about if you're just becoming a retailer, which is what in the process I am in. So it's effectively, again, going to be in the children's market, specifically focused towards playtime equipment and kind of like an offshoot of Little Gliders. But I'm hoping to start it completely in a completely different market in India and then see if I can expand it outwardly than the other way around.
Yeah, interesting. So if you could talk about your challenges or the wins and the losses, what is really working for you right now?
What's working for me right now is honestly, I've been in this for about just under 2 years now. And I think in the first few months or just before starting, you founder or any entrepreneur businessman would probably say it is you walk in with this kind of conceit and confidence that you'll hit success in the first few months, then you get the shit slapped out of you. It's inevitable. Anything happens. So I think the biggest thing for me is that I have acknowledged that expectations are not going to be sky high, and my head is back on my shoulders. And you'll be acknowledged that you're going to hit inevitable failures no matter what venture is. And that's more of a personal psychological thing that's working for me, that I'm much more grounded than I was a year ago. But in terms of what is working for me is that I'm able to identify trends and things that are working and not working a lot faster. And I'm willing to drop things that don't work a lot faster than I was a year and a half ago. Because you have this thing of trying to push things through, even if you know in every sign that it's not going to work. But aside from that, on a personal level, you understand the market better. You understand marketing better. You understand these tools like Meta and Google a lot better. You can see through bullshit a lot more than you could a year and a half ago. You learn a lot and your head is on your shoulders. The reason I'm saying this right now, not specifically about the businesses, is because I've exited two of them. So I'm not dealing with the day to day of that much anymore. So I'm coming out of it with having made some money, peanuts in a larger scheme of things, but still made some money where I can focus on more of the psychological learnings to put those learnings into the new venture I'm working on and Little Gliders as I'm willing to expand it.
Yeah, yeah. So you've been having pretty much good experience in the meta and the marketing, the digital marketing, it seems. So if you could elaborate more about the strategy you follow, especially running the ads. So how you optimize the budgets and how you optimize the strategies and all. If you could please share a few, it would be really helpful.
First, so for starters, again, in high ticket, products. More often than not, like for example, let's say you're looking for, I'm going to use the example of a treadmill again, this simply because we've been using it so far. If you are in the market to purchase a treadmill, which a good one starts like 1,500, 2,000 pound plus, you are probably not going to be convinced to make that purchase by just scrolling on Instagram. You're going to do your research. The customer purchase journey is a lot longer than it is for something that's a cheaper product, because there's a level of research involved, there's a level of understanding what you want, what you need, what the product is. There's expertise involved in there. Anyway, there's a lot of customer touch points. So for high ticket brands that I've operated so far, the fitness one, e-bike and the baby gear, we use Meta more for retargeting, but we first acquire that customer through Google, because we emphasize a lot on Google SEO. We emphasize Google Performance Max campaigns, Google keyword search, and we can go into more detail about what the Google strategy was. But in an overarching level, we get the customer to land on the website initially somehow through Google, because that's when they're searching buy e-bike near me, or the best e-bikes in the UK, best treadmills in the UK, what are the best brands in the UK. They're looking for information, they're doing the research, and that's how we kind of get them into our website at like a middle or a higher level of the customer purchase funnel. So that requires a whole level of strategy with Google and content within the website itself. And then once you're on the website, no customer immediately makes a purchase for £1,000. They leave, they come back, they leave, they come back. They think about it for a few weeks, they think about it for a few days. So you have to make sure that your website, the place where they can make that purchase, the place where they can kind of research more on the product itself, on the different brands that they are, and that they can speak to customer support, is your website that they keep coming back to. So that's where Meta comes into play. So what we do is we acquire the customer on Google, or we get them to land on our website initially, the traffic, and then we retarget them heavily on Meta, and then retarget them obviously on Google as well. So once they've landed up on a website, they've viewed a product, they've conducted any kind of search action, customer support interaction, we make sure that we are top of mind for them going forward. So to put it very plainly, customer searches something on Google, they click on a link, whether it's organic or paid for link on our website, land up on our website, interact with it some way or form. And based on that interaction, if it's higher up the funnel, we bid less on meta retargeting. If it's deeper into the funnel, for example, check cart or whatever, we invest a lot on retargeting and make sure they keep coming back into the website and eventually choose to make the purchase on the website. So if you see our budget is actually split about 50-50. We spend about 50% of it into Google, which is where we focus on people on the higher level up on the funnels, more generic keyword searches. And then we spend about 50% of it on Meta, which is heavily focused towards retargeting, where we make sure we get back into it. And in high ticket e-commerce, that's the game. You will get traffic initially very easily, but the trick is to make sure that traffic comes back and makes the purchase from you. And that's where Meta play is crucial. We almost never get cold traffic from Meta because it doesn't make sense. You don't search or do research on Meta for these higher ticket items.
That's really, really useful insights. So, as you've been in the D2C industry, so in what place does the customer support sits on you? Like, if you could talk about the challenges you've been facing with the customer relationship and the customer service.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are the few challenges you've been facing?
I mean, for starters, there's a lot of customer interaction. If you're buying a 2,000 pound electric bike, customers not just going to usually go and check out like they do a t-shirt. They're going to have a lot of questions. They're going to have a lot of questions about the product itself, the specifications, the brand, a lot of questions in delivery, installing, assembly, a lot of questions on after sale. So for starters, if you're handling customer support, and I did for a long time initially, right? There was nobody else. I was completely bootstrapped. And eventually you start offloading it and outsourcing it. You need to make sure you or whoever your team is completely aware of what the product is. And you can't expect them to depend on Google when the customer's on the phone with you. Be like, oh, and they ask you a basic question about the motor of an e-bike. You can't be like, oh, let me get back to you in 20, 30 minutes. It doesn't work. You need to be an expert of what the products are and what the brands are. And that's number one. Instantly, you lose trust very quickly because this is ultimately a game of trust. And the second challenge is effectively when it comes to the logistics of delivery and after sales support. Now, when you are doing drop shipping and high ticket drop shipping, I'm assuming your audience knows what drop shipping is, right? You don't own the inventory, your manufacturer or supplier owns inventory. They fulfill the order and you don't really see the product most of the time, right? I have seen the product because I've visited those facilities, but I physically don't see the product because these are not my brands. I'm selling other people's brands. It's a retailer. So if anything goes wrong, the customer comes to you but you yourself don't know or can't do anything. You have to depend on the manufacturer. So it becomes a point where you need to have very good relationship with your suppliers. I need to make sure that you have systems in place for the most obvious kind of issues that come up, damage during delivery, warranty issues, etc. Because the customer doesn't know your supplier, your customer doesn't know the brand. They purchase from you, they expect you to have all the answers, and you need to have those systems in place. Or even if you don't have it in place, you need to know that the first few orders, when things go wrong, and things always go wrong, 10% of the time things go wrong, and you have to be prepared for it, that you're going to be able to retain that trust of the customer and ensure that they don't return the product in a damaged condition. So that is the biggest problem here with high ticket e-commerce. One, you got to know your products really well. And two, you got to be very good at answering and quelling a lot of the concerns and constraints the customers face in making a purchase like this online, whether it's after sales, delivery, and knowledge of the product itself. So quick responses, trust, all of those things. And third, finally, have your systems in place for any kind of after sales support, because customers will expect after sales support from the retailer they purchase that from. So that stuff requires cost and systems that you set up in place.
Yeah. So if we can talk about the Lilora, your new venture, so where are you seeing it from, from now, in the next 6 to 12 months?
I mean, Lilora was very, very new. So I think we kind of just incorporated the entity that's going to be running Lilora about 4 weeks ago. So we are very much in the process of kind of figuring out what the brand is going to be, the branding itself, the URL, figuring out the product catalog that we're going to be selling, our positioning, and kind of understanding the back end of it. Now, because Lilora is a venture where we are starting our own brand, excuse me, where we're starting our own brand, where we kind of have to own the inventory. We have to work with manufacturers on the designs that we are giving them, the packaging and etc. Instantly, the upfront costs are a lot higher than a lot of the drop shipping I did. So right now, we're kind of balancing, figuring out, cornering what exactly our sub niche is going to be, how our branding is going to be, our sales channels, the business model itself, while simultaneously speaking to suppliers and coming up with our designs, and also fundraising. And that's something I've never done before. I've never had to fundraise because all the businesses I started before were completely cash trapped and kind of funded from my own savings. That's one of the constraints I talked about earlier, which is why I got into dropshipping. All of a sudden, you're seeing me building out pitch decks, reaching out to pre-seed VCs, investors, friends and family, government grants in India, in the case of India, stuff like that, which I never had to do before. So that's a whole different environment for me to figure out as I found out. It's very exciting because you suddenly become a salesperson for the brand and trying to justify numbers that you don't necessarily know with confidence yet, but you know you have to make it work. But to answer your question more specifically, what I see in the 6 to 12 months, I think in about 6 months' time, we will have a product catalog done, manufacturing in play, branding set up, and we will at that stage be doing the steps required for our go-to-market strategy. Whether it's setting up the website to a point where we can start accepting orders, the strategy regarding marketing, the customer funnel, all of those things leading up to a launch a couple months after that. And this is, again, Lilora is going to be specific to the Indian market. So it's very different from the businesses I've done so far. And it's a completely different market. And it's very new operating in India because I haven't lived in India for like a decade. So I'm trying to figure all of that out at the same time. And if you know anything about Indian e-commerce and retail, is that after January till about June or July, the Indian customer doesn't buy much. Most of the purchasing happens after June, July, which is when, festival season starts and there's always one festival after the other. So we probably can be ready to go live and launch by like March. But it's probably not going to be the best idea to do that because the first few months of marketing budget and performance marketing, because that's when you don't have the time to build a brand and trust, you depend a lot on performance marketing for the first few months. And if customers are not going to purchase it, it's going to be ridiculous. So these are things that we need to figure out. So with Lilora, we're really in the phase where we're trying to figure out what to do and how we're going to do it, really, and also fundraising at the same time. But to be more specific, we are doing higher ticket items. So again, I don't understand the marketing and the customer psychology of products that are in the 20, 30, 40 pound range. It is not how I work with the customers I worked so far. The products you're going for are going to be 100 pound plus, even in the Indian market. So it's very high ticket. And we need to figure out how to position ourselves, keeping that in mind. But that's where we're at. So fingers crossed, maybe the next time we have a chat, I'll be in a very different position with Lilora.
I really wish you all the very best with this new thing because it is like, I feel like you came out of your comfort zone because drop shipping is one such thing, and whereas building your own brand is completely a different thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, what shift you want to make out of this new brand, like coming from the drop shipping and making your own thing?
I think first off, with drop shipping, no shade on drop shipping, right? It's a very simple yet phenomenal way of doing business. It's amazing, and it's really low barrier to entry. If your cash trap is phenomenal, great way of fulfilling items. But I don't see it as a way of building a sustainable business long term. It's very difficult. It's virtually impossible. I think the reason I could exit the businesses is because I reached a plateau, and that I could only break that plateau if I invested more into fixed costs by owning inventory, setting up after sales support, or do things that I wasn't willing to do with those businesses in the drop shipping model. So I ended up selling it to people who had the wherewithal to go invest into those things. And luckily enough, I had built enough track record to make the sales. But ultimately, the biggest problem with dropshipping, like I said, is a race to the bottom. Eventually, people are going to go after the cheapest product. You can have the best customer support on the planet. You can respond as fast as you want. But if your competitor is offering the same product for 100, 200 pounds cheaper, and that's like a 20% discount, the customer's probably going to go for them because they're buying a branded product anyway. It doesn't really matter the retail after the point. And after that, your margins, which are 30, 35%, ends up going to 10, 15%. And then you don't end up making enough money to grow. You can get by, you can pay yourself a salary, but you're not going to be able to grow. So with Lilora, it's exciting. For the first time, I really want to be in control of my own customers and the customer journey. I want to have some access and control with the inventory and the manufacturing because it is ultimately mine. I'm not going to be, it doesn't feel like I'm a middleman where I have no control what happens after the product is sold, where I have to depend on my supplier for fulfillment, where I have to depend on my supplier for after sales support and warranty and manufacturing. And I'm just kind of the go between. I'm really excited to kind of take care of that full journey, which means obviously a lot more investment, a lot more fixed costs, it's a much bigger risk, but that is something I'm looking forward to doing. And by doing that, I can take care of my customers a lot better. I can live up to some of the promises I make to them because I know I'm fulfilling them myself, which is something I'm very excited to do.
Yeah. So it is like having the connection between you and your product, because you are the owner of it and you are going to do everything from scratch to until the delivery of the product. So it is completely going to be different kind of journey compared to the drop shipping. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you have more ownership over everything. And that is something I really missed with dropshipping. Again, no shade. I love it. It gave me the start I needed in business. But I knew it was time to move on from whatever it was.
Yeah. Yeah. So before we wrap up, like if you could share a few suggestions for the people who is looking for the same kind of work they are doing. So the first suggestion if you could give about the drop shipping. So what suggestion one suggestion you could give?
For drop shipping, I would say again, there's two drop shipping, right? There's the cheaper drop shipping of sending stuff from abroad with 20, 30 pound items, which is what I initially tried, but I failed at that. So I'm not going to get into it. My suggestion is don't do that. It doesn't work. If you think you don't have control about the customer and the supplier at a higher price point, you're offering nothing to your customer. These are short-term ways of making some quick money, if at all, but you're probably going to burn your entire money on marketing to even get the customer in the first place. You won't have trust. It's not worth it. But for high ticket dropshipping, which is what I did, where you're working with reputable brands, where you're working with brands that have been around for decades, the thing I would say is that definitely do it if you feel like you're in a position where you want to take a plunge, but you don't have the wherewithal, the finances, or the ability to go fundraise to go get funding otherwise, because it's business. Ultimately, it's always easier with money. If you have money, do whatever you want. You don't need to drop ship it. But if you don't have money, and if that is a constraint, then by all means do it. But be very realistic about what your expectations are. You're probably realistically not going to be able to build a full-fledged large-scale business with it because the margins are just so tight, and it is going to be a race with the bottom. So get into it to get your feet wet, to get into the ball game, but set clear expectations of how much you're willing to give into this in terms of finances, your savings, etc. And when you have an out, and use that as a way of learning the game of e-commerce, learning the game of dropshipping, fulfillment, in a way that you wouldn't if you don't do it. But have an out. Know when it's time to leave. Don't push it to the end if it's not going to work.
And the other side, starting your own brand and building everything from scratch. So what suggestion you could give?
I mean, to be honest, I'm still figuring that out myself.
Mm.
But the first thing I can say very quickly is that you need a lot more money. You can't do it from your own
Yeah.
savings. It's very difficult. Like I don't know whoever's listening to this, what your financial situation is, unless you have hundreds of thousands of pounds sitting in the bank, you probably at some point are going to go get an investor or a loan or something like that. So be conscious of that. And the thing about business, whether it's drop shipping or starting your own brand, is that costs will come from everywhere. You won't even realize it, but costs will come in and things will go wrong. Things inevitably will go wrong. It's just how business is, right? You need to be prepared to prepared for the scenario that things will go wrong that you could not even anticipate it. And be willing to see it through, which means how much of a money you think you need or probably double it. Be willing to fundraise. And then I would say honestly, test out the waters depending on how what your risk appetite is. Start with drop shipping, then go after your own brand. And the other thing I would say about whenever you do decide to go with your own brand, pick a niche, pick a very, very specific niche, because it is very difficult to find your corner and what you're going to be good at in this incredibly crowded market. So if you're working towards a very existing market about whatever the product is, find a niche within that, whether it's going more premium or not or otherwise, and then slowly expand. Don't go all in at once. Find something that you're good at, be very specific, be very conscious about who your customer is, and go as targeted as possible. And if that works, is then you start spreading. Don't go head on with an incumbent. Don't go head on with anything because you will not be able to compete because it is incredibly competitive. And also be very cautious that the biggest bottlenecks in this game in e-commerce is going to be Meta and Google. They will dictate your fate. If you are not willing to bow down to Meta and Google in terms of budget, policy, or otherwise, you will probably not get customers. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So that was really fantastic chat with you, Akhilesh. So you have shared so many wonderful insights. I think people will really love what you shared about the drop shipping and starting your own brand. So if people want to reach out to you, where they can find you.
I mean, you can just probably find me on LinkedIn. That'll be the easiest way to do it. I have a multiple email IDs that I monitor, so that's going to be tricky. But I think the way you found me, Venkat, on LinkedIn, it's just Akhilesh Sandeep. DM me, reach out to me. Happy to always have a chat. And obviously, I'm a young person trying to start a business, so I'm happy to speak to as many people as possible as well. So shameless about that.
Yeah. Thank you, Akhilesh. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, happy to be here. Thanks for your time, Venkat.